Here's my story. Be 16. Be black and have family down in Alabama. They farm and own a huge amount of land down in Huntsville. Uncle owns a big house and a bunch of trailers that they put out into the woods for hunting or camping. Down south, cousins suggest that we go down there to camp. Know I'm a city kid from Chicago, so they tease the fuck out of me. Collect food, kill a pig and some chickens, and bring necessities to the camp for a few days out. We get to camp and it's obvious something is weird. Air has this weird electrical smell right before a storm, like ozone. We think nothing of it and unpack and go to the little creek for a swim for a few hours. All of a sudden, some older white guy and a white teenager comes out of the bushes. He's got a shotgun in the crook of his arm and he says hello and asks us what we're doing this far back in the woods. Tell him about my uncle, who he knows, and says we're camping out. He tells us we need to be real careful out here and stick together because there were some big animals in the woods. His son, who is my age, asks if he can stay and hang out with us. He says okay, so we end up playing football. Dicking around with me, there's a white kid named Tanner, 5 of my cousins, and then 4 of their friends. In total, there were 5 girls and 6 boys. We were all around 15 to 17, and we all ended up dicking the day away. Eventually, we head back to camp and pull out some stuff for the campfire, even though that the trailers both had kitchenettes. Tanner says that his family's property sits up against my uncle's. He must have run home and asked his dad if he can come out camping with us. My cousin Rooster says that he's going to go with him since it's going to get dark soon. One of the girls also wants to tag along. It's about 7 o'clock. It's starting to get pretty dark. They grab flashlights and take the trail towards Tan's property, and the rest of us chill. Make s'mores, drink, kiss on the girls. About 30 to 40 minutes later, there's a smell of ozone again. You could notice it over the scent of the fire that we had started. This really nasty, coppery smell, like right after you've had a nosebleed and it stops. It wasn't exactly like dried blood, but it was that metallic back of the throat smell. We immediately think it's some kind of electrical malfunction or that someone left a hot plate on or some shit. We search the trailers and nothing's on, but we could all smell it. And all of a sudden, we hear people booking it down the path towards us. Rooster, Tan, and the girl all came running into the clearing out of breath, and they don't even break a stride. They all run into the trailer right by where the fire is. And we all get the fuck out of there and into the trailers. They end up all calming down. Even Rooster is crying his fucking eyes out at this point. And all the while, the fire is guttering lower and lower, so my other cousins say fuck it and are about to go outside to get the generator out of the shed between the 2 trailers. Tanner goes, fuck no, lock the front door, ain't nobody else going outside. He's been crying too. His eyes are bloodshot and puffy and his pants are all dirty as shit. He goes on to tell us that he went up to his house. His father said sure, he could go out camping, but make sure that they were careful on their way back, and maybe they should take out one of the hunting rifles just in case. Evidently, Tanner had seen something in their yard a few days before. One of their pigs had been ripped up and half-eaten. They assumed that it was just some big cats or coyotes, even though they don't usually fuck with live animals. And Tanner went upstairs, packed his stuff, and he told his dad that he would be okay without the rifle, because coyotes avoid people. Then they started to walk back towards where we were camping. Rooster finally stops crying and shaking. And the girl already had, but now was just staring out in the window with a dumb look on her face. He says they'd gotten halfway into the woods towards the camp when they'd started to hear shit in the forest. It was almost pitch black by this time, so they weren't sure at first what the fuck it was. The girl says that she heard something in the bushes right off of the trail. They all beamed their flashlights over there, and there was someone standing in the woods in a little hollow. Rooster says that they shouted at him and told him that he was scaring the fuck out of them and what a dick he was. He says that's when he realizes that the guy was facing away from them. They keep walking, and they start smelling the nasty coppery ozone smell. They say that they look off into the forest on the opposite side, and there's a dude standing there too, backwards, slightly closer to the path. So now they start power walking, and Tan keeps going, I should have taken the fucking rifle. And as they're telling the story, the smell is still super strong, even inside the cabin. They say that after they started walking faster, a kind of low gibbering had begun, coming from both sides of the woods. As they booked it back to the trailer, the girl said that she flashed her lights out to the side of them and saw something jerking itself in the woods. The gibbering just got louder and louder, and then they could see the light from their campfire. Something had come out of the woods about 40 yards behind them onto the track. And they just flat out ran as hard as they could to the trailer. So we're out in the fucking woods, and we're assuming at this point that some rednecks or some shit is trying to fuck with us. All of a sudden, my other cousin, Junior, starts going on about how he went to school with a native kid, and he was telling us about the Goatman or some shit, and we probably tell him to shut the fuck up because we don't need any spooky talk right now. But he just keeps going on and on about how it's the fucking Goatman, and how we're in his woods, and whatever. Now at this time, I had never heard of this Goatman or any of that. But then a couple of years ago, the year before I graduated from college, I had to meet him for a roommate, and ended up asking him about it. To sum it up, it's basically a fucking man with the head of a goat, and he can shapeshift and get among groups of people and terrorize them. It's also supposed to be kind of like a Wendigo. It's bad mojo to even talk about it, or even worse, if you see it. Keep in mind, I didn't know this back when I was 16. So my cousin is going, the Goatman's gonna get in and fucking get us. The girls are all terrified, and my cousins and I are fucking trying to figure out if it's all just some hillbillies or an animal. All of a sudden, the smell just goes away. To this day, I haven't even experienced anything like it. Obviously, smells usually fade away or lessen, but it literally was just there 1 second and not the next. It's after an hour, making around 9 or 10. We stopped shitting bricks enough to go back outside and stroke the fire again. We figure it was just some assholes trying to fuck with us, so we didn't go back home. Because we think if we do, they'll chase us through the woods or some crazy shit. But nothing else weird happens that night. We stay another night. For the main part of that night, nothing happens. But at about 1 a.m, we're outside getting drunk, telling ghost stories as someone is finishing some spooky story. I don't remember what it was about. The smell comes back. And it's so fucking strong that one of the girls literally starts vomiting. I stand up, and you can actually feel how clammy it is in the air. I say we should get inside and that this isn't right. We should have just fucking left. We all go back inside, and we're standing around. My cousin keeps going on about how it's the Goatman, and my other cousin Rooster tries to shut him the fuck up, and all the while, I'm just feeling that something is wrong, and I can't figure out what the fuck it is. We end up sitting there for a while. The smell is just as strong, and we're all terrified and all huddled in this camper. We end up cooking brats for everybody because nobody else wants to go outside. It's one of those packets with 4 brats, and we have a total of 3 packs. I grill them up on the stove and give everyone a hot dog, and then I get mine. After a while, one of my cousins gets up and goes over to the pod to get another one. He starts grumbling about how I got 2 brats and everybody else only got 1, and I look at him like he's fucking stupid. I tell him that everybody only got 1 because there were only 12 brats, and that if he wanted more, he should have opened up a new packet and cooked some more. That's when the girl that had been out with Rooster and Tan just starts screaming, "Oh Jesus, oh Lord, get it out!" She's crying and shivering, and then it dawns on the cousin standing up what the fuck is wrong. Me and him both glance around the room, and I feel my heart fucking sink. I run the fuck out of the cabin, and the girl runs out with us. The trailer door is banging against the side of the trailer as everybody books it out. One of my cousin's friends asks us what the fuck is wrong, and I start counting us. There's only 11 now. I shit you not, my cousin verified. There had been 12 people in the cabin, but being that everybody didn't really know each other well, nobody had noticed the whole fucking time that there was an extra person. And then I realized earlier that I had kind of noticed something was off. You know how when you're just dicking around having a good time that you don't really sweat the small shit? You don't always keep track of certain stuff? I'm dead sure that someone else had been in that trailer with us, and that they had been there for at least a fucking day, eating with us. What makes it worse is that I couldn't figure out who it was, because I don't think anyone ever actually interacted with the other person, the Goatman. The girl kept praying to Jesus, and we're all sitting outside. Eventually, we get big-ass sticks, and we go back into the cabin, but there's nobody there. We count again, and there's 11 people. We go back into the trailer and lock the door. We explain what the fuck happened. The girl says that she realized too, and that when she was about to say something, the person sitting next to her had grabbed her leg hard, leaned over towards her, and said something that she couldn't understand. So we were all pretty much scared as fuck as we huddle together, and I fall asleep. And when I wake up, the sun is just coming up, and half the people are asleep and the other half are packing up our shit. We all want to walk back home, but like 4 people want to stay until the sun is all the way up, and some people think that we're just fucking around and still want to stay at the trailer. I just want to get the fuck out of the woods. The girl's name was Kiara, the one that the Goatman had touched. Anyway, I asked if she really thinks it was something bad, and she says she just wants to go home and she doesn't really want to be out in the woods alone for another night. So we decide to split up. The 4 that want to go can go, but I have to stay because I have the keys to the cabin and it's my uncle's and I have to lock it up. I'm super pissed at this point because I feel like people aren't taking this shit seriously, and I definitely didn't want to be out in the woods for another night. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince the rest of the people, now 4 girls and 4 guys, to get the fuck out of Dodge. Tanner leaves with them to go get a rifle and says he's going to be back. So there are just 7 of us left by 4 p.m. At around 5 p.m., he hasn't made it back yet, and we're getting extremely fucking antsy. The only reason why I stopped begging them to leave was because he went to go get a gun. At about 5:30 p.m. or so, the one cousin that did stay says that the girl, Kiara, is outside. And we all look outside, and sure enough, she's standing by the fire pit with her back to the cabin. And I'm thinking to myself, if she was so fucking scared, why the hell would she come back? And then I get this nasty feeling in my gut. Keep in mind, the whole time, the coppery smell had been gone. Now I realize I can smell just a twinge of it. I say this to the rest of them, everybody, and these are the people that wanted to stay in the fucking woods after we had the goddamn Goatman in our midst, is laughing at me and asking if I set this up to scare them. And I'm looking at them like I'm not fucking bullshitting you right now. I asked them why the fuck would I play like that. One of the girls goes outside to get Kiara. She gets halfway to her and stops cold. Kiara starts heaving. I don't know how the fuck to describe it. Sort of like if someone with their back turned was laughing without actually making any sound. It was this fact that made me realize there was not a fucking sound in the whole woods. It was dead silent. This was like late September, so it was still fairly hot at the time, but super chilly some days too. And you could usually hear big-ass geese honking or some kind of birds or squirrels chittering. I step outside the door and tell the girl to come back in the fucking trailer right goddamn now. She backs up into it, and we lock the fucking door. We pull down all the shades except one, and we put a guy there in a chair to watch Kiara. She stands there for another 20 minutes or so. Eventually the guy turns and says that she's still there, and there's this huge fucking bang on the door. We all jump the fuck out and scramble around the living room of the trailer. The banging is super fucking loud. My cousin is holding one of the girls, and the other 2 are giggling with nervous laughter, and me and the other 2 guys are shitting bricks. And then we hear Tan, he's screaming, "Let me the fuck in, stop fucking playing." So we get over to the door and we open it, and he stumbles in with a rifle. There's nobody else outside. Evidently, he had walked up to the campsite. Nothing weird had happened in the forest, but he had seen a girl. Mind you, he said it was not Kiara standing there. When he had gotten to the edge of the clearing, she turned towards him with a slack-jawed look and started to stare him down, slowly tracking him as he walked around the outside of the clearing towards the camp. He says it wasn't till he was almost halfway to the trailer that he realized that she was getting closer to him. She had started off by the fire, and without him even seeing her move, she had been turning, inching closer. He said he just ran the rest of the way back to the cabin, thinking it would open. When he got to the door and it was locked, he turned and it was about halfway the distance to the door. He looked around the room and then he goes super pale. He pulls me to the side and whispers in my ear, "You know there are only 7 of us here, right?" I get that feeling where your stomach drops to your nuts. It had been back inside the trailer while we were sorting out who was going where. And then, when we all went outside to talk earlier in the day, it just slipped right back in. We looked out the window and there's nobody there. So we recount, and I go over and ask everyone how many people were here earlier, and everybody says 8. And I say, well, how many are here now? They all do the count and realize that there are only 7 people in the cabin. Tan had brought back a couple of boxes of ammo and his rifle. He had told his dad that there was some kind of animal in the forest because he didn't think he would believe it if he told him that it was the Goatman. He says that his cousin is supposed to be coming down in a few hours and that in the morning we can all go back up to his place and his cousin will drive us home. Now I'm really fucking terrified. But at least I feel better because we can be American and shoot the fuck out of whatever it is if it comes back. But then my cousin gets into a huge argument with one of the girls because she thinks I'm trying to be funny and prank them. She's getting really scared and thinks I'm not funny. He keeps telling her that I'm not that kind of person. And she says, well, how do we know that the girl wasn't Tanner in a wig? Or if it really is the Goatman, how do we know that it's the real Tanner and that the Goatman didn't just kill Tanner in the woods and take his gun? So we get into this huge fucking argument about it, where me and Tan are like, we could seriously be in danger because at the very least, someone has been sneaking themselves into our fucking trailer without us knowing and mingling with us, and at worst, something bad is in the forest fucking with us. One of the girls is crying and saying she wants to go right now, and we're trying to tell her we shouldn't because none of us are walking through the woods in the middle of the night. At this point, the sun is starting to go down and it's getting a little cloudy out. We eat something and turn the radio on for a while, but we can't really get a station out there with anything decent. So we turn it off at about the time that Tan's cousin shows up. And he was like 19, I think. Now the sun is just barely over the horizon, and he has one of those heavy-duty lantern flashlights and another rifle. He walks up to the trailer, and we whisper to Tan, asking if he's sure that's his cousin. He says yes. The guy looks behind him and all around the camp, and then walks in. He glances at all of us and looks a little confused, and he says, "Where's your other little buddy at? I figured she would have met me up at the cabin. Is she a little slow or something?" He also asks whether we've been cooking blood in the cabin because it smelled like blood in hot pans all the way up the trail. We were like, fucking nope. We ask him what the fuck is he talking about with the girl he saw. He had come down the same trail Tan had been using and found one of Yu's guy's buddies standing in the middle of the trail, looking at him slack-jawed. He asked her a bunch of questions, but all she did was look at him, and then she smiled. And then he kept walking. She couldn't seem to keep up with him and kept lagging a little behind. He asked if she was hurt or something and if she needed any help, but she had continued to stare. Eventually, he turned around a bend in the trail, but when he went back to see if she was okay, the trail was empty. He assumed she had just taken a shortcut through the woods to our trailer. We tell him the whole story of what's been going on. I half expect him to say that we were full of shit, but he just listened and sat down on the couches in the living room. Tanner's cousin gets back to the girl. He says that when she kept trying to lag behind him, it kind of weirded him the fuck out. So he tried to keep her in front of him. But no matter how slow he walked, she was always lagging a little bit behind. He smelled this nasty smell, and it got stronger as he got to the camp. Eventually, it got really strong. She had said something really low that he didn't catch, and when he turned around, she'd been right fucking on him. He stepped back from her. It was at this point that he asked her if she was okay. If she wasn't, he'd offer to carry her back the rest of the way. She just kept staring. He said he reached out for her, as in to grab on her shoulder, and he must have misjudged the distance because she was off to the side of where he had put his hand, like she had moved while he was looking dead at her. So at this point, we all know this shit's real, unless Tan is playing a joke, which we can all tell he's not because he's almost pissing his pants. They load up their rifles, we eat some more, and we just kind of sit around until about 11. To this fucking day, every time I think about it, I really pray to God that it was some huge pranks that my cousin played on me and never revealed so that I would shit myself for the rest of my life. At around 11 o'clock, the stink of copper turned into an actual gross, blood-like smell, like cooked blood and singed hair. Tan and his cousin, Reese, get the fuck up instantly and grab the rifles. There's like a half knocking, half clawing on the door, and I shit you not, there's this voice. It sounds like when you see those YouTube videos of cats and dogs whose owners teach them how to talk. It says in this haunting, weirdly toned voice, "Let me the fuck in. Stop fucking playing." It made my fucking nuts creep up against my body, and one of those girls just started crying and calling for Jesus. It was so fucking obvious, not a person talking. It didn't have the right cadence. That's some shit that I never realized until that moment. But all people have a certain cadence when they talk, no matter what language. All people have a certain kind of rhythm when talking. This shit didn't have any kind of cadence or rhythm. One of those YouTube cats, that's what it fucking sounded like outside the door. Sorry for being on a tangent, but if you can't imagine how this shit sounded, then you can imagine how fucked up the whole situation was. So now I'm in full-on terror mode. We keep yelling outside, "Who is this? Stop fucking around, man." And it just keeps saying, "In." Or, "Let me the fuck in." For almost 15 minutes. And then the smell goes away for a while. And for the next hour or so, you can hear someone basically creeping around the woods and shit. Every couple of minutes, it comes back to the door and says something. Fuck in. Finally, the smell fades at around 2 a.m. Reese says, "Man, fuck this," opens the door and walks outside with his rifle. He fires a shot into the air and says something to the effect of, "In the name of Jesus Christ, go away." He fires 2 more times, and then from the woods, right up against the river, across from the trailer, it sounds like something is slowly gibbering and hooting. And then it starts screaming. And it sounds almost like a woman and a cat in a bag screaming together. Like, I seriously have never heard any shit like that. We can hear the brush over that way start to shake. Reese fires into the tree line and then starts backing up into the building. We lock the door and we can hear the shit keening and screaming. Reese says that something had come out of the bushes super low to the ground and was crawling towards the cabin. He had shot at it. Pretty much, that was how the rest of our night went. Literally constant screaming for the next 2 hours and shit moving out into the tree line. But it never came back to the cabin until everyone had finally fallen asleep. Tan had been sitting in the chair watching the door with his rifle. Nobody else heard or saw this, and he told me 2 days later, after the whole thing was over. He said he had been nodding off after the screaming and noises finally stopped. He'd been almost asleep when he saw someone come out of the bathroom and lay down in the middle of the floor and go to sleep. He assumed it was just one of us, and that the guy had nodded off. And then he said he kind of realized something was wrong. While pretending to be sleeping, he counted us. There were 9 people in the cabin. He didn't want to try and shoot at the fucking thing and have it kill us all then and there, or Reese wake up and start shooting and then kill ourselves. He just stayed awake all night, pretending to be asleep. He says sometimes it would stand up and kind of do this weird jittering thing, or heave like it was laughing. But then it would lay back down. The story closes pretty weak, because from my perspective, nothing happened. When we woke up, I noticed that Tam was a little jittery, and that he was avoiding looking at all of us. But we ate some breakfast, packed up, and started walking to his house. He stayed last in the cabin, and he said he'd lock it up and bring me my uncle's keys. He told us just to start walking and that he'd catch up, which I didn't really want to fucking do. We got a bit up the path, and when he comes running up, we just jogged back to his house. His cousin took us home. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and looked in there. We were too stupid to lock the screenless window, and it was... Tan had gone back to lock up and look in there. There was a window in the bathroom. Tan had gone back to lock up and looked in there. We were too stupid to lock a screenless window, and it was fucking up when he went in there. I'm guessing it had been doing that all along, waiting for us to fall asleep or slip up and then get in amongst us. It walked with us all the goddamn way back to the house. And then he said it lagged to the back of the group and looked him dead in the eyes before walking into the woods.